Good evening. This is the, we're here for the Town of Auburn Selectmen meeting, and we're not able to start yet. We're waiting for a third member. So until that happens, we're just going to be on hold. Thank you.
Hello? Hello?
Is that someone saying? Good evening. Welcome to the October 15th meeting of the Select Board for the Town of Auburn. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long
I keep
as
trying to get in
reasonable
on my
public
other phone, but
access,
it's not going through. Can you hear me?
as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations
This
of the meeting.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, 1-408-650-3123 and access code 235-235-861. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com, join 2352-35861. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Is that Dan? Might have some of our members participate remotely today, so I'm going to do a roll call. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dan Carpenter.
Here.
Okay. Steve Chambers.
Here.
Ann Kavanaugh here. Todd Corain.
Present.
Okay, so that means all of our votes today will have to be a roll call vote, too. All right, so now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so next on our agenda is the public comment section. First on the list is Ginger Berteau, our town clerk. Ginger.
Good evening. I'm just here for the warrant for the state election for the November 5th, 2024, for that to be signed, please.
Okay. Just in one spot?
Yes.
Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, next on our agenda, next on our list for public comments, Mr. Craig, and I want to ask, would you prefer to reserve your comments to speak when we have the public hearing for Wallace Ave? Yes. Okay, thank you. Ed Paquette, is he joining us remotely?
I don't believe he's with us.
Okay. Next on the list, Dan Largess. So just make sure you say your name and your address, please.
Good evening, Board. Danny Largess, 39 Perry Place. Over the last couple of years, we've talked about sidewalks. We've allocated money for the sidewalks. The first time I ran, we talked about Bremore Ave extension at Warren. The police chief was in here, one of the residents over there, Mrs. Mars, and I was contacted the other day, and apparently nothing is being done that is visible. I took a ride over there. They did demolish the pumping station, cleaned up the landscaping, and planted trees 5 feet from the roadway. How long will it take to do this? I've reached out to DPW Joanne numerous times, never got a phone call. So I reached out to Mark Lindblom. Mark has called 3 times since last Monday, has not yet got a phone call returned. We're trying to figure out what the timeline is for the sidewalk to be constructed. I mean, Selectman Corain and Selectman Carpenter, I believe, were very aware of that, and we talked about at the Mass Pike Bridge, the Mass Pike, the state did that part. I'm assuming it was the state. They paved before the bridge, paved after the bridge, filled in the cracks. But what is the timeline these residents are asking that this sidewalk is going to be done? There's been numerous accidents right there at the emergency ramp at the Mass Pike. There was one rolled over there about 6 months ago. Even the police chief was in here if I spoke about it. Mrs. Mars had contacted him. What are we looking at for a timeline to get something like this done? 2 years, I think, is a little ridiculous. I mean, if somebody gets hit and killed over there, or some kid riding his bicycle, it's kind of ridiculous.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
So I can't get a timeline or an answer on this, or?
Do not have a timeline, but it's something certainly that we can forward the concerns to our DPW director, Joanna.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, back to our public comments. Now, Jen Steinberg, you signed up. Would you like to speak now, or would you prefer to wait when we do the hearing on Wallace Ave?
I'll wait for Wallace Ave.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next on our agenda, we're going to look at we have a hearing for the Fiesta shows. They're looking for an outdoor entertainment license and a carnival/amusement park license at the Auburn Mall on Southbridge Street in Auburn. Do we have anyone from Fiesta Shows here?
Yes, you do. This is John Flynn, Vice President of Fiesta Shows out of Seabrook, New Hampshire.
All right, thank you, John. So we're going to, we need a motion now to open the hearing.
Make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, so we're going to do a roll call. All in favor, Dan Carpenter? I'll come back to Dan. Steve Chambers?
Yes.
Yeah. Todd Corain?
Yes.
Ann Kavanaugh is a yes. And Dan Carpenter, this is a motion to open the hearing.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so what questions does the board have for the applicant?
Through the chair, can we just ask them to outline what they're looking for and
Sure.
go from there?
Did you hear that, Mr. Flynn? Just give us an outline of what
Yes,
you're
I
looking
did.
for.
Yeah, it's going to be a smaller footprint than we had the event that we did there 2 months ago. It will open Thursday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Thursday and Friday it will run from 6 to 10. Saturday and Sunday from 1 to approximately 10. And naturally, upon the approval of this board, then we would be able to arrange for police details, fire details, electrical inspection, health inspection, and building department inspection, along with the state that comes out to inspect the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
We ask
Yeah.
if there's public, anyone from the public?
Yes, does anyone have any questions regarding the hearing for the Fiesta shows licenses? Okay. I have a question, sir. We were, have you filed the special permit decision with the Worcester Registry of Deeds?
Yes, I did. I dropped it off to the upstairs in Town Hall at the planning board,
Okay, thank you.
along with the notifications to all the abutters that were sent out.
Okay, thank you. Dan, do you have any questions? Okay, hearing no other questions, do I hear a motion to close the hearing?
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Steve Chambers?
Yes.
Todd Corain?
Yes.
Ann Kavanaugh, yes. Dan Carpenter, motion to close the hearing? Dan Carpenter, we have a motion to close the hearing, and we're voting yes or no for that. All right, so do we hear a motion to approve?
We're going to continue without,
Without him, yes, we have.
I'll make a motion that we approve the outdoor entertainment license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state, town, and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, with the conditions of the DCG to be placed upon the license.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, this is a roll call vote also. Steve Chambers?
Yes.
Todd Corain?
Yes.
Ann Kavanaugh is a yes. Dan, this is a motion to approve the license, yes or no?
Just said you can hear you, so I think he's.
I think it's because this one was talking.
Yes, he's having trouble, we're having trouble hearing him, so is the volume all the way up?
Tell him to try it again.
Can you try it again, Dan, voting yes or no to approve the license?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's, we need 3 to approve, so that's all set. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Flynn, you're all set.
Do we need another motion for the carnival amusement?
Oh, I beg your pardon, we need a second motion because there are 2 licenses. Go ahead, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve the carnival amusement park license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state, the town, and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all of the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, with the conditions of the DCG to be placed upon said license.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Steve Chambers.
Yes.
Todd Kareem.
Yes.
Ann Kavanaugh, yes. Dan, yes or no for approving the second license?
I think he just logged back in. He did log off.
Can you guys hear me now?
Is that a yes?
Danny, you on the dashboard? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm a yes.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, going back to the agenda. Okay, our next item is a public hearing on the request by developer for the board vote to sign the local initiative program application for proposed 72-unit 40B project at 88 Wallace Ave, Auburn. Okay, so we need a vote to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, roll call vote. Steve Chambers.
Yes.
Todd Kareem.
Yes.
Ann Kavanaugh, yes. Dan Carpenter.
Yes.
Okay, great. So there are some people,
Madam Chair, can we have Sotir, the developer, come up?
oh, yes. Is this developer here? So, please come up to the, our seat here. Thank you. So we have 3 people who've already indicated that they'd like to speak. We'll start with them, and if anyone else wants to add something, that's okay, as long as we, remember, it's not a question and answer, and just make sure you speak clearly and state your name and address very clearly. All right, so Mr. Craig, Dan Craig, you can speak first if you want. Go right up to the mic. Yeah,
At some point, we got this by email. Can
Yeah.
we get this into the record?
sure.
Good evening, and my name is Dan Craig from 90 Wallace Ave. I am a direct abutter to the proposed project at 88 Wallace Ave. And I've been asked to speak on behalf of the group, but this is an open hearing, and if you have anything to say, you know, I only have a few things to say tonight. But if you have anything to add on, you know, this is the time that we're invited to speak. I specifically am talking about the water issue at this point, and I am asking this board not to vote to accept the LIP application at this point in time, based on the fact that the water department is waiting for the completion of a project to provide potable water to this site and many others in the town of Auburn. At this point in time, they cannot meet their maximum daily distribution. And back in April, excuse me, I gotta find my place. I lost my place. However, the April 2024, the bids for the last portion of this project exceeded the engineer's estimates, and alternate funding and design options are now being considered. It is now anticipated that the project will not be completed until late 2025 or early 2026. In summary, the district's approval support for the 40B project is conditioned upon the timeline of the Worcester interconnection or the startup of the South Street treatment plant, whichever is completed first. The district would be unable to meet the MMD of its existing customers, not including the proposed 72 residential unit with the Church Street wellfield offline, and this condition will continue until either the Worcester interconnection is completed or the South Street wellfield is back online. The district appreciates that it is a modification of the March approval. However, the construction delay necessitates the district amend its decision. So I'm asking this board tonight not to act on the approval of this LIP application. Thank you.
Thank you. We had another individual who signed up to speak, Ed Paquette, and we're thinking he might be participating remotely. Ed, are you available? Okay, not seeing him. I think we have next Jen Steinberg.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Steinberg. I live at 36 Wallace Avenue. I am speaking about the 42-unit proposal. So currently, Massachusetts is a right-to-shelter state, which I assume members of the board do understand. For anyone who doesn't understand that, that means that anyone who comes to our state seeking refuge is provided that refuge. Currently, we in Auburn on Southbridge Street are housing 185 people, 185 individuals at the La Quinta Inn. I know this because I work for the town of Auburn through the schools department. This number of individuals fluctuates daily. As I see in my school, I work specifically with the ESL department, those students who are learning English, and I'm the single person in my building who assists these students directly for them to learn English, which is my main language. I remember a little bit of Spanish from my past, but not all languages. This puts incredible stress on the school system already. Stress on the fire department, the police department, the EMS department, and of course the schools department. I am worried about when I hear 72 units, that does not mean 72 people. That means 72 units that will house who knows exactly how many people. I see that as a huge strain on our town, on the infrastructure of this town, that in my 20 years of residing here, there hasn't been much in terms of infrastructure. We have a mall that has become a reliant with few stores struggling. We have an ice skating rink, which if you know how to ice skate or play hockey, that's a great place for you. But otherwise, you know, we have parks and we have a library that is, you know, stressed with the staff it has and what it's asked to do. So when I hear 72 units, I think of all of those places that we would like people to be able to vacay and enjoy and use. And I think of all the systems like a fire or police or EMS department that have to respond to calls to help those individuals. And we're already at a max. So I'm just concerned about that. So I'm asking the board not to approve building this 42-unit housing structure. I think that you can't just add housing to any community before you look at all of the parts of that community that will be impacted.
That's not.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I believe Mr. Ed Paquette has joined us, and you were on the list. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would.
Just say your name, please, and your address.
All right. My name is Ed Paquette, 92 Wallace Ave, Auburn, Mass., obviously. Are you all set?
Yes, please continue.
Okay. All right. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who could find the time to attend this meeting and also point out that there are many more who could not make it tonight. Tonight, we hope that the Select Board has reviewed all the information we have provided them and does not provide a letter of approval for this project. I would also like to quickly go over some of these important issues so that all in attendance are aware of them. The Water Department, item number 1, I should say, Water Department has rescinded the approval of this project as of July 18, 2024. The 2024 Auburn Housing Production Plan, approved by the Selectmen and the Planning Board, has created 40B zoning districts, 7 of them. This is where all 40B housing should go. Excuse me one second. Given the residential character of the neighborhood, changing the 5-acre lot on 88 Wallace Ave to a commercial use would require a 2/3 voter approval at the town meeting under Mass Land Statute 40A. Auburn has also been designated as a compact community, which gives the town the right to not accept any 40B development plans. The town has not done a cost-to-community survey. The Auburn 2024 Auburn Housing Production Plan and MGL Chapter 40B under statutory minima states that construction of low or moderate income housing sites comprising of more than 0.3 of 1% of the community's total land area, or 10 acres, whichever is larger. Section 4.2 of the Auburn zoning bylaws requires a minimum of 6 acres for any property to be considered for development. This property is not either. Everything that I'm reading to you is provided on the Auburn website. The following is from the Auburn website 40B fact sheet. New guidelines require that more extensive review of project designs and how they fit into the neighborhood context and town planning efforts. They also make it easier for communities to become appeal-proof by lowering the number of subsidized housing units they must create each year to demonstrate that they are making progress toward their 10% safety harbor goals. The progress is defined by either an increase in affordable housing units equal to at least 1% of the town's year-round housing units over the previous 24 months, or a 0.5% increase with an improved plan over the previous 12 months. This allows the town to deny or reject plans. I'll qualify that a little bit more in a minute or two. Allowing units to count on subsidized housing inventory as soon as the permitted is issued rather than having to wait for occupancy. Requiring developer compliance with an extensive audit program and cost certification guidelines. Currently, the town does not have this, but it's required by 40B. Allowing municipalities that have hearings and plans underway on 3 or more projects to defer hearings on any other additional projects, requested. About appeals. The Appeals Committee has a study on their website that shows that 69% of appeals requested are either withdrawn or dismissed. 40B requires a minimum of 25% of the projected subsidized housing. This is a minimum standard for a project. This can be increased, as an example, 30% or more to help attain the safety harbor objectives for the town of Auburn. Selectmen are the gatekeepers on this issue and the impact it has on the town and its people. The developer, in this case, does not care about either. He has not even produced a real plan. Please do not allow developers to dictate to the town on what is good for us and where we need it. We will have to deal with these and live with these decisions for a long time. The Auburn Housing Production Plan, using the information on this plan, which to use the 2020 decennial census, the Auburn Safety Harbor number is 5.2%. This plan also states that the town will reach 6.4% when the Eastern Partners, which is Albert Street, is completed. The fact that the Perry Place project has now been approved should only help. According to the recent 40B regulatory changes, if it is permitted, it counts. So the town has met its, as I stated earlier, its 0.5% and 1% metrics. With all due respect, again, I suggest that the Select Board not approve this project on 88 Wallace Ave because of all of this and the other issues that we have talked about. These, I'm listing now, are just some. The housing plan supported by this production plan supports in detail the same reasons we have brought up as to why these type of projects should be focused on the 7 areas that are listed in the town production plan. I also suggest that the Select Board and other boards not accept any more 40B plans until the boards are up to date on all 40B issues. Find a way to get updates or changes that come out, but mostly institute a plan for all to see how to manage this process in a way that the town has some control over it. Looking at how other towns handle it, and some are doing very creative things. Looking at the best practices others use is a great management tool. Developers should not be able to dictate to the town. As a suggestion, create an application process that requires a fee and presenting a real plan and have the developer pay for all the expanded expenses, mailings, etc. Expanded mailings are very important. As we saw in the last meeting, only 6 people required notification. In a project like this, when we have a multitude of commercial buildings and a multitude of additional families coming into a neighborhood, it's important that more than the abutters. The abutter notification is designed for somebody that's going to build a garage, or put a new porch on, or do something small to the neighborhood. Not a plan like this. This requires, which you have done, an expanded notification program. Also, all developers should have to pay an annual fee to cover whatever it costs the town to start doing the annual audit that's required, which I brought up a few minutes ago. Again, I want to thank everybody for attending the meeting tonight. Those are the issues that I wanted to discuss. We have provided all of these issues to the town, hoping that they could see they were clear to put this issue to bed and not approve it or give them the approval letter that's required to move forward with this project. As everybody knows, this is not where a project like this is designed to be, shouldn't be. The town has already designed and put 7 areas in the town, which are available on a website for anybody that wants to look at it, where the 40B housing should be in the town. Those guidelines, which have been approved by the Select Board and the Planning Board, are the areas that they should be focusing on. Not because somebody has a house lots they want to turn into a commercial development. It's something that shouldn't be allowed to happen. Again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to coming tonight, and I thank you, the Board of Selectmen, for giving us the opportunity to discuss this with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parquet. Is anyone recording this meeting? Okay, what is your name, sir?
Alan Rafferty.
Okay, thank you. All right, going back to, we still have our hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, right there.
My name is Heather Foster of 46 Green Street, formerly known Heather Lux. My grandfather and my family have been long occupants of Auburn. We own Lux Tree Farm. I own part of that tree farm on the back side. Our property goes right up to those houses that are on the inside part of Wallace Ave. My biggest concern as a mother I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old who are getting ready to go to Auburn school, and I live close enough where I'd like to walk them to school every day in the event that I can. And traffic has been a challenge, especially with crosswalks. This year alone, we had one boy, unfortunately, that was hit by a car at the end of the street, and it was very traumatic, and it makes me reconsider walking my children to school, making sure that they're safe going to school and coming home every day. And that's something that I really look forward to when I moved to Auburn and bought my grandfather's house, was upholding those values and those things that my dad did as a child and that my grandfather did living on the farm on Laurel Street. And listening to Danny talk about some of the challenges that we've had with infrastructure and organization with roads in our town, makes me, wonder, with 72 units going in on Wallace Ave and traffic going towards Rochdale Street and coming down Berlin Street onto Oxford Street, that there will be more accidents and more kids being hit, sideswiped. There won't be any bicycles at school anymore. There won't be any walkers at school anymore. Everybody's going to have to pay to take the bus if you live anywhere outside of Bryn Mawr Ave. And for me, that's something that, I know it's selfish, but it's something that I really uphold, and I think it hosts good value in our children. It gets them exercised and ready for the day, and it really contributes to academic success in a way that schooling doesn't by itself. But I would really urge the board to consider traffic and children crossing the street. A lot of my neighbors walk their children as well, and little kids with bikes and instruments and trick-or-treating when it comes up. It's going to be a challenge for a lot of us who live in that immediate area of Wallace Ave. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Yes, sir. Make sure to say your name clearly, please.
Ralph Capaldi, 94 Wallace Avenue. What I would like to do is to ask the Board of Selectmen not to destroy the neighborhood that my children grew up in by allowing this to happen. We live in Auburn. We love Auburn. If you haven't been down Wallace Avenue, I would ask, before you make any decisions, that you drive by, that you look at the property, so that you can decide for yourself whether or not you'd like to live in a neighborhood where there are 72 apartments, where the traffic is going to be increased, and I want you to drive up and down that road and decide whether or not you think that road can handle that traffic. That's what I would ask you to do before you make any decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Yep.
Hello. Hello. My name is Elaine Brousseau. I live at 69 Berlin Street, and I am here to oppose the traffic. And I know other people have mentioned it, but I live right at the bottom of the hill, and they fly down that hill. And I don't know how we're going to stand another 24, well, I shouldn't say 24 because somebody mentioned 24, but it's 72 units, plus their mate and whatever. So it's just too much traffic. Right now, well, let me go back. When I moved in 1996, it was an event if somebody went down the street. Now, it's a regular occurrence, and when I pull out of my driveway, I literally have to wait, most times, for traffic. It is very, very busy. That's all I have to say. Okay?
Thank you. Back there, yep.
Hi, my name is Linda Wick. I live at 37 Byland Ave. Just a little aside to what you said. On Berlin Street, when my father was 10, he was on the handlebars of his brother's bike, and he broke his arm. So, going down that hill. The only thing I wanted to ask was I was reading a lot of information. I was reading a lot of the information of what the state requires, and I have heard nobody say anything about an environmental impact statement. Has there been one? Can you tell me what it was, please?
I don't think it's reached that point yet. I'm going to turn to Adam to ask if he's aware of one. I'm not aware of an environmental impact study done at this point.
Okay, because when I read it, you can't be granted a permit without one. So are you putting the cart before the horse here?
I think that's part of the approval process when it goes before regulatory boards.
So you can't approve until you have it?
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I may ask, is our water superintendent in attendance tonight? Because I know there's some confusion in terms of the backup water line, and if you can share some information as to the status of that project and how it may impact this 40B proposal.
Greg Woods, Auburn Water District Superintendent. As the gentleman read earlier, we are doing the water interconnection with the City of Worcester. We do have over half of the water main installed from the City of Worcester's line up to Sword Street, but due to a excessive bid for jacking the water main underneath the railroad tracks in Kettlebrook, we have opted to change the design and continue down South Street towards about 206 South Bridge Street, where our existing main ends. So rather than go underneath to Sword Street, we're going to continue down south on South Bridge Street to make that interconnection. The surveyor just wrapped up the survey this week. The engineer will be designing the main and will be having it out to bid probably before the end of the year, if not January. So the expectation is that portion of the project will be put out to bid, and the interconnection should be hopefully done this time next year. We already have the metering building installed, so this is the last part of it, but unfortunately due to that excessive bid for the jacking, we have had to redesign the setup.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions?
Yep. So I think everyone thinks tonight we're going to approve this project. We don't approve the project. This would just help the application process. I think there's been some things that were stated about other projects that are not factual. They could become factual, but they're not there yet. And the board has been a part of, and the town has been working on that housing development plan to help protect us from these things. So I guess my question would be to the developer, do you plan to negotiate to mitigate any of their concerns?
Right now, I don't have the technical background to share with anyone. Just for the neighbors, this LIP application is designed to help the town work with the neighbors to come up with a viable plan. Anything that you want me to do today, and if I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, one decision can nullify everything that I have to do. What I need to do is I want to work with the town, with all the neighbors, and come up with a plan that everybody can live with. The only way I can make that happen is I need the board's support to submit an application to the state. The state will decide at that point, by looking at all the comments, if they think it's a viable location, if it is a viable project, based on the 40B process that they have initiated back in 1968, 69, around that time. So the application gives me the opportunity, and the board too, to work together with the neighbors and come up with a plan that we can make it work. Without that approval process, anything that I do, it's a waste of my time, your time, and money. So by having the board on board and signing on the LIP application, Basically, the board is acknowledging that affordable housing is needed in the town of Auburn. And I am the conduit by which I'll end up helping the town meet their requirements and create policies and decisions for future projects that may not require a situation where everybody gets all up in arms and they're thinking, well, this is not a good place. I don't know if this project will work once I have the engineers on board. I have to look at the site distances for people leaving the site. I have to go out and find out if the grades will work. I have to make sure sewer connections, water connections, there's a whole bunch of things that have to take place. But they all take place with the Zoning Board of Appeals because they are the authority that dictate what exactly can happen, not happen, when to happen, when not to happen. You're all going to be part of that process. You will be at the meetings with the ZBA. You'll see the technical issues that come up and how they are being addressed. Nothing is going to happen without your consent, without your involvement in the process. But what it does is creates a working relationship between the developer and the town, acknowledging that there are concerns and they need to be addressed. I can't go and do any of that work until the LIP application is approved. The alternative, and some developers have used it, they submit an application directly to the state without the town. And that's when it becomes a problem, for me at least. I don't like just coming up and saying, this is what I'm going to do. So my goal is to work with the town of Auburn and work with the Zoning Board of Appeals, work with the neighbors, and come up with a plan that can work. The only way I can do that is by having the board become part of that application process. So by approving it, you're not approving the project by signing on the application. It just strictly says, okay, we acknowledge there's a need for housing, and we got to work trying to make it work. If the sites, I find out, that can't be developed, it will be because I cannot satisfy all the health and safety issues that they come up. If I find out during the design process that the cost of building is too expensive, I may just say, hey, this is not viable to build. But I can't give any answers until I go through the initial step. And that's the step that I'm working right now with the town of Auburn. And hopefully you will understand it and allow me to get to that stage where I can go and submit the application to the state. And if the state approves it, then I come back here with a full application to the Zoning Board of Appeals, who will end up sending the application to the Water Department, Sewer Department, DPW, Conservation Commission. All the boards will get to see the same application that is being submitted, the same applications that you get to see at that time. And that's what I'm here to do. You know, I came to this town, I think it was November of last year, and I have been working, trying to get basic information to satisfy a request that was made by the board. And at the time, they had asked me to make sure that there is sewer and water and a preliminary analysis of the traffic study, which I have done. But beyond that, it's just, I don't know what exactly is going to be the plan to work with. So that's basically where I'm at, and hopefully, you know, you'll give me the opportunity to work with the Board of Selectmen and through the ZBA work with you guys and come up with a plan that works for all of us.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir. Could you come up to the mic, please? What's your name, sir?
Douglas Lassen, 134 Wallace Avenue. The fact that this is even being considered is just absolutely crazy to me. Like, we have a single-family home neighborhood of like ranch homes and cape houses. To even suggest to put this monstrosity in the middle of our neighborhood is just completely disrespectful to your residents here. To even consider that is crazy. We've got all this up past Route 12, down past Town Fair Tire. Build it out there. Middle of our neighborhood? What is the matter with? I can't even believe this is being considered. This is nuts. We need affordable housing, whatever. That's above my pay grade. Sure, put it somewhere else. In the middle of our neighborhood with our kids and all this stuff. We have a lake. I mean, that's all I got to say. I don't know.
Steve, do you just want to continue on your initial question?
So one thing that this board can do is ask if you'd be willing to increase the amount of affordable housing should the project get approved. I know you're at the state minimum, but would you look at possibly increasing that?
I would consider anything that this board and the neighbors are asking me, as long as it's viable to make it happen financially. If I end up saying, let me put it this way, I did an affordable housing development in one community, and they asked me more than half of the units to be affordable. And I did. I don't think the town or I were happy with the outcome, because it limits how much money you can have to work with and create a product that everybody's proud with. So the affordability, to answer your question directly, yes, we can look at to see what options are available to increase the percentage of the affordable units in the project. But how much? I mean, we need to go through the exercise of figuring out what exactly we're working with. The ZBA may say, hey, we want to reduce the density. Reducing the density could have an impact to the number of affordable units that can be built in order to make it financially feasible. But to your point, the answer is yes. We can take a look to see if we can have more affordable units.
Mr. Crane, questions?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. Can I just get clarification from the Auburn Water District? We have emails and a letter indicating that your viewpoint is that this can, that your water service can provide the necessary water here, but then we've heard from testimony that that was rescinded. Is that the case, or does your initial statement still stand that you can provide the water for this project?
Greg Woods, the Water District. The Water Commissioners conditionally approved this. We will be able to provide water once the interconnection is completed. We can meet average day, we just cannot meet maximum day demand with our largest source offline. So to your question, the board has rescinded the offer until, or rescinded the acceptance until such time as the interconnection is finalized.
And you expect the interconnection to be finalized by around this time next year?
This time next year, correct. If it goes out, it's 2,200 linear feet right down South Bridge Street to make the connection, and then it's just a matter of getting the DEP approval on it.
Great, thank you. Couple questions, other questions for the developer. So you have 18 affordable units. What's the percentage of AMI that those are programmed at? So are they 80% of AMI? Are they 60% of AMI?
It's 80% of AMI.
So it's 80%. So you're not looking to lower that at all to offer what I would consider more affordable units?
It's possible to do that.
Okay.
Annual maximum income.
Yeah. It's the average median income for the area. The affordability that for 40B is that you set the 80% of AMI is where it becomes quote unquote affordable for his units. So if you look at the pricing that he has there, I think his affordable units will start around $1,600. A lot of people don't consider that actually affordable, including myself. When we're talking about affordable units, that's why I'd like to see something closer to 60% AMI that would drive those down and actually be real affordability.
By the way, those rates were done before HUD maximum income limits have been raised. Right now, a two-bedroom unit leases for about $1,802.
The affordable or the non-affordable?
Affordable ones.
The affordable will be 1,800?
Well, I have it at that value there, but that value that we presented to the board could be at the 60% level because of the pricing that I have provided.
So you're going to be sticking with the pricing that's in here regardless of where it falls in the AMI?
No, the answer to your question would be, do I want to consider putting some that are at 60%? And the answer is yes. Whether or not I can stick with those numbers, a year or two or three down there, because the whole process is not going to happen overnight.
I understand that.
The Zoning Board of Appeals, they're going to have their own consultants that I got to be paying for to review everything. It might be a year, it might be 2 years, it might be 3 years to address all the concerns the ZBA has. So it's not a process that's going to happen overnight. It's something that takes time.
Right. My concern is that the LIP application that we're signing says 1,600.
Yep.
And if that's not an actual number 2 or 3 years from now, and that's 1,800, then obviously the town's not getting it.
Everything gets proportionally changed, you know.
In terms of we've heard concerns, not just tonight, we've heard it from the residents consistently on safety of the roadway, on its ability to sustain a large development like this. Your own consultant, as part of the initial scan, said that it could support it, but they recommend safety improvements be further investigated. I know I raised this issue going back to November of last year. Has there been any thought by your consultant, GPI, on the types of safety enhancements that you are going to commit to in terms of upgrading the roadway, adding sidewalks, building
So
it
the
to current
traffic
standards?
engineers look at the overall project, and they come up and they say, this road, it's too narrow, you need to expand it. They may say, you don't have the sight distance, you need to do X, Y, and Z. All those things are taken care of at the time that the application is presented to the ZBA. So the answer to your question, again, is yes, we will be looking at those. And if I find that the health and safety issues are compromised, I cannot get a comprehensive permit. So I have to make sure the consultants, at minimum, they have to make sure the health and safety issues are addressed. And if they're not addressed, I cannot get a permit to build it.
So another concern I've raised, and I know others have raised, is that you are within 100%, the buffer zone for conservation. One of your buildings just touches, I think, the 100-foot setback.
Probably try to get it out of the conservation jurisdiction by having the buildings put in such a way that it
So
doesn't.
have you looked at that yet, or have you said I can, that you can do whatever you can? Have you instructed your architects that you will not be within that 100-foot buffer?
I don't know exactly if that 100-foot buffer is where it's shown on the maps. So the first thing we'll end up doing before we go to the Conservation Commission and say we are in the buffer, or to the ZBA, is to do a delineation of the wetlands. My intent is to limit and not have to go to as many boards and comply to as many of the requirements the Auburn zoning bylaws have in place. And if I can't, then I have to prepare a list of waivers for the Zoning Board of Appeals to investigate and see whether or not I will get the waiver or I will not get the waiver. But the answer to your question is the 100-foot buffer zone area has not been delineated to say it's exactly where it's at, shown in the maps. Because the maps we're working with are, scaled down, they're not up to scale.
So you haven't done a survey of the site?
No, I have not done a survey of the site.
Okay. I'm good for now.
Thank you. Mr. Dan Carpenter, Mr. Carpenter, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Not at this time.
Okay, we can take a few more questions from our audience. Yes, right back there, you would ask? No, you gotta go to the mic. I know, sorry. We just want to be able to, this is a recorded meeting, too, so we need to have a record.
Linda Wick, 37 Byland Ave. Linda Byland Wick. I'm just confused. If you don't sign this letter, is the developer saying that he just turns around and goes to the state, or what happens? I don't understand what happens. That's number one. And does the developer own the land now? No. So there's no consideration of for the town trying to buy that land for conservation. Has that ever been considered? Thank you. Oh, could you answer that first question?
Yeah.
'Cause I don't-
Madam Chair, can we ask the planning director to answer that question on the 40B process?
Or Adam, would you come up, please? So,
I think before our town planner takes a swing at that question, in a prior meeting, it was stipulated that the land was in chapter land, which would have allowed the town the right of first refusal. We did take a look at that. This parcel of land under consideration for this development is not recorded in chapter land. Therefore, the town of Auburn does not have the right of first refusal. So I think there's some other land in the area that may be in chapter land. This parcel proposed for this project is not.
Okay, thank you. Adam?
I think the question was, if the developer doesn't sign this, can they go to the state? Was that the question? If he so chooses, he may. It's happened with other projects.
Can I just ask the resident if that answered your question? Okay.
If the board does not sign the LIP tonight or the next, or on a future meeting, the developer, if they choose to, they may still go to the state.
Next question. Mr. Rafferty?
Alan Rafferty, Paul Street. I didn't come here to speak tonight, but when I hear bullshit, I have to call it out. Recently, there was a decision rendered by the Zoning Board of Appeals in which they violated our own bylaws. So if you think your planning boards are here to defend you, they certainly didn't defend this poor lady who just wanted the town to enforce their bylaws. Second, there was a recent planning board meeting where the planning board members voted against a project. The next meeting, they came, and then they were threatened with a lawsuit. They were going to take you to court. They came back at the next meeting and said, oh, town council said, we're going to be sued, so we're going to change our mind. We're going to approve the project. In addition, they were told by town council that they personally could be sued. I really don't think that is real. You can't sue an individual member of a planning board. They're protected by the town. But in either case, if you think these selectmen and their board appointees are going to have your best interests, you're kidding yourself. Thank you.
Does anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Yes, I do. This is Ed Paquette again. Is it okay if I speak?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say a couple of quick things. One, this piece of property, one of the people asked a question earlier about if it was 60A or who owned it. This piece of property originally belonged to the town. It was given to the town by Mass Electric to be used as open space and recreation for perpetuity. Now, how can we imagine that this piece of property now ends up with a developer? What happened there? That this other gentleman was just on talking about BS. There's a long trail of what happened to this piece of property, and I think everybody should do due diligence and look into what happened. And I think there's, from certain individuals on this dais, there's a little bit too much pro-developer going on here. We've given you all the reasons why you don't need to develop this piece of property. You don't need it. There's no reason to give this gentleman this letter of approval because that starts the process. If we don't give him this letter of approval, everything else you're talking about goes away. This should be denied tonight, whenever you're going to do it. We should not give this letter of approval to this developer. Nothing good will come of it. All the promises he's making, as he stated, revolve around him making money. He doesn't live in the town. He doesn't care about your neighborhood. All he wants is the property and to build a lot of houses on it so he can turn a profit, which makes it commercial. You don't want commercial land in your town. It just doesn't work that way. And all we're looking for tonight, we know that the Board of Selectmen aren't going to give him approval to develop it, but you have to give him the approval to move forward. All we've said tonight is that you should not give this gentleman the right to move forward with this project. If you're going to put 40B in the town, put it in the 7 areas you've already dedicated for 40B construction. shouldn't be going into this neighborhood. Everybody that, if you talk to in this town that he hasn't been able to make the meeting, there is no need for this project and nobody wants it. It shouldn't be considered. And I know I'm being redundant, but I've heard too much tonight about all the things that are going to stop it, except the only thing that's going to stop it is by the board not giving this letter of approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paquette.
Thank you.
Adam Menard, could you clarify for us what, if the board votes yes, what happens? If the board votes no, what happens?
So if the board votes yes, then the developer will go to the state with the co-signed application to see if the project meets the state's eligibility requirements. If the application is not signed, the developer may choose to still go that route and see if it meets eligibility. The LIP is designed to enable the developer to work with the town so that both sides have some benefit and can mitigate effects.
All right, thank you very much. There was one question out in the audience. Yes, sir. And then just a couple more after that, I think.
Good evening. My name's Robert O'Connor, 87 Wallace Ave. I've got a problem with the orientation of the driveway. It's pointed directly at my bedroom window. It's a downhill driveway, and I'm on a downhill lot. All I can see is a car coming over the bank, and maybe it won't reach my house, maybe it will. Maybe it'll hit my cars that I park right there. I don't see how you guys can point 150 cars at my house during a snowstorm or an ice storm. This is kind of ridiculous. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Someone else maybe who hasn't spoken yet?
Someone online?
Dan, would you like to speak?
I just had a question, Madam Chair, through you to the town manager. If we approve the LIP application, how does the negotiations proceed? Because in the past, we had negotiated ahead of granting approval. And second part of that question is, if we say no, does that forestall us or the ZBA from negotiating with the developer?
Great question, Mr. Carpenter. What I can say is in the past, we've had direct negotiations with the developer in advance of that vote of the board. Quite honestly, I think that is probably the recommended way to go if the board were to consider that, because now we've identified some of the concerns that are raised through this public hearing, and how we're going to address it and mitigate it with the developer is part of that LIP agreement.
Do you have another question, Dan?
Just if we decline to partner at this stage in the process, does that stop us from having a conversation with the developer as a community to try and negotiate?
I would say that would be up to the developer, certainly. If there were a no vote tonight, as indicated by the town planner, then the developer could always file directly with the state if he so chooses. We have no control over that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Crane.
I just have one other question. Other than the meetings that this board has held, have you had any meetings or tried to organize any meetings directly between yourself and the neighbors to discuss this project?
I think I offered it to Dan because he's the representative of the neighbors. But if we didn't have one yet, but if they want me to have a meeting with them, I have no problem doing that too. It's up to the neighbors, you know. But let me ask this question. Having a meeting, the sentiment here is that we don't know what will happen to the project once it gets to the design stage. So whatever comments I get, there'll be comments like, well, I'd like to have some plan in place that for the cars coming in, for that gentleman that said the lights will be hitting his house, I can come up and have a discussion to what design they would accept in order to mitigate the lights hitting his house, for example.
All right, thank you. I have a question, sir. And Dan, actually, Dan, you have a question first, please. And then I have a question. Dan Carpenter.
No, I don't have any questions, Madam Chair. Just those two that I just asked. Thank you.
My question, sir, is there a willingness on your part to negotiate some conditions prior to the board approving a letter that could be sent to Boston? Okay, so it's not all, you're not saying everything should be in the ZBA process. You're willing to negotiate up front?
Yeah. If you have conditions, and I would, most of the time, when an application is submitted to the town, this is not unusual that what's taking place. People have concerns. We take the list of concerns they have, and you can make it part of the LIP application. And then I can evaluate it and make sure that we can do the things that they think it's a problem for them and address it in a way that they feel comfortable with. So to answer your question, negotiating for things that you expect to see take place before the LIP application is signed, yes, I would like to have a time frame to get this thing taken care of. But the answer to your question is yes.
Okay. All right, one more question, I think, from someone who hasn't gone before? All right. Thank you.
Hi, Rich Duran, 61 Wallace Ave. Not a question, more of a concern or a comment. Governor Haley recently passed a new housing bill that allows all of us to build ADUs in our yards. If you're not familiar with an ADU, it's an alternative dwelling unit. It cuts through all the red tape. The town really can't stop you from building one. It doesn't have to be a relative that lives there. You can rent it out. This is going to have another huge impact on our town. I just didn't know if the board has taken this also into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to read a letter. We received an email from two residents. I'd like to read their comment into the record. This is from Dan and Amy Cole on 7 Byland Ave. Select Board, we're writing you to express our concerns with placing a large apartment complex at 88 Wallace Ave. Both Wallace Ave and Berlin Street, which would both be primary access routes to the proposed units, do not have sidewalks and are fairly narrow in parts. Walking there requires care from both pedestrians and drivers. The streets are also walking routes to the nearby schools. The number of units proposed would add many more car trips, maybe 10 times more, than the house lots that the site had previously been approved for. We believe that would be an unacceptable increase in safety risk with the current streets. We do not think the town should support this initiative unless we're able to ensure that both these streets are upgraded to current standards with sidewalks and other pedestrian controls. This would be quite an undertaking, and it doesn't seem like the town is planning to address this need. Again, thank you for your consideration. David and Amy Cole, 7 Byland Ave. Board, on our agenda, we have, we're able to take a vote tonight if we wish, but what is the will of the board? Again, we do not have a full quorum. We do not have a full board here tonight. We have 3 members present, 1 remote, and 1 is not here.
Based on the comments and the developer's willingness, I think we should delay this vote, maybe potentially set up a working group to work through the residents' concerns and see if there is some sort of agreement that could be met, and at a later date, potentially bring it back to vote on a more formal or more in-depth LIP agreement. But again, my understanding was we negotiate first before we sign on in a LIP, and it doesn't mean that we have to. It means that we negotiate and do what we can, what's best for the residents in the town.
Yeah, I mean, given all the information we've heard tonight and everything we've heard since November of last year, I'm not prepared to sign or vote approval of this LIP agreement as presented tonight. There's no doubt that we need more housing in central Massachusetts and more affordable housing, but I don't think, but it should be the right size, the right location. So I'm in favor if the will of the board is to enter into negotiations with the developer to nail down specifics instead of leaving it to the ZBA that they may discuss, he may be willing to, he'll have to look at it. I want to see hard commitments before I would vote for something.
So it sounds like we need a motion then. Yeah, Dan, do you have any comments you'd like to add to this also?
No, I agree with the two board members that have spoken, and I think, again, we should, in the absence of a guideline, policy, or procedure, which I know we're going to deal with at the end of the meeting tonight, to try and at least make steps for that, that we follow the prior procedure, and which is to negotiate or attempt to negotiate first, and then if we can come to a common sense agreement that satisfies the parties, then maybe we can sign off. But at this point, I'm not prepared to say
Thank you, Dan. Okay.
I don't know if you can take that vote tonight because we didn't notify the general public of
That we're going to vote.
So we may have to carry that over to the next meeting.
I'll make a motion that we carry this to a further meeting. I don't know if the next meeting's the right one. Do I need to specify that timeline?
I have no problem having the vote extended. What I'd like to ask the board to help me with is set a date by which we have an understanding of what it is that you expect me to do for the town, so you can sign the LIP application. I don't want to have this thing continued for 4 or 5 months and still be, I think we can do it within a couple of meetings or 3 meetings among the board members or whoever you designate, including maybe representatives from the neighborhood,
So, Madam Chair, can I make a request that on our next agenda, there be an agenda item to appoint a subcommittee of the board to enter into negotiations on behalf of the board with the developer to develop an agreement, a LIP agreement that stipulates the various concerns and have that take place at the next meeting. And I think at that meeting, we could set a deadline to give the developer an understanding of expected timelines.
I am a little concerned with the timeline, not knowing everything that's going to go into this. So again, I don't know what, you're looking for a timeline to move quickly. I think after the first meeting with people would be a more appropriate time to have a timeline. That way we can understand the concerns, where there's commonality and where there might be differences. And the differences are going to be what dictates the timeline, I think.
But all I was asking is having meetings that are more frequently over a shorter period of time. I don't think it's fair and reasonable to meet once a month to have a negotiation take place and then come up with items that are acceptable to all parties. If we can commit ourselves to meet once a week, if it takes 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, at least we are getting to the point that we have some understanding of what the terms are going to be. That's all I was asking,
So it sounds like at our next meeting, we can have on the agenda a notice that says that we are going to take a vote to create a committee. And then at that point, we should be able to set up some times to negotiate with you. Okay? Do we want to close the hearing, or do I hear a motion to close the hearing or continue the hearing?
So I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing at this time. Before I make that motion, I want to get an understanding that we can always have another hearing once we have a finalized LIP agreement. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing on this issue tonight.
Second.
Second, okay, so all in favor, we're going to do a roll call. All in favor, Steve? Or opposed? Yes. Todd?
Yes.
Ann is a yes. Dan?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the plan. We'll close the hearing and we will address it again. In 1 month, we're going to set up, next meeting, so in 2 weeks, we'll set up the committee.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And why don't we have a 5-minute recess to clear out the room, please? Thank you.
Like tactics, folks. Stretch it out to you lose interest. That's how they always do it. They tell the neighborhood, do it.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda, do you want to go tell them? Oh, the next item on our agenda is a presentation on Safe Harbor 40B by Josefa Chowdhury from Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. Thank you, and you're here, and we have the presentation. Thank you. Should I go tell them?
It'd be great if everybody else that was here would be in this for this presentation.
I know, this shouldn't have left.
Very true.
Should. Sorry.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So this is going to be a housing presentation in regards to Safe Harbor and comprehensive permits in Chapter 40B and understanding the clarity of it. My name is Josefa Chowdhury, and I'm from the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, and I'm a regional housing coordinator as well. and I work with the town of Auburn in terms of helping them achieving their housing needs. So again, we're going to talk about today Chapter 40B and the comprehensive permits and going into safe harbor. So to start off, I would like to start off with the definition of Chapter 40B and what it is. So every municipality in Massachusetts must obtain at least 10% of its housing stock being deed restricted as affordable. So that makes housing or households that are earning less than 80% AMI, which is the area median income, to go into that 10% aspect of it. And Chapter 40B provides opportunity for developers to bypass local laws that are under the 10% threshold. And then Safe Harbor would give these options and relief for towns that are under pressing these 40B needs. Again, kind of we have a developer that came in, since Auburn is under the 10%, this is an issue that is going on with it. Would be kind of fun if everybody that was here in the presentation, but yeah, to understand what's going on with the whole process of it. So comprehensive permitting and safe harbor. So in municipalities, again, where there's less than 10% of their housing stock deed restricted, the developer can bypass it. So in this process, I think he had his 25% labeled as affordable, which was how many units was it?
18.
18 units. So those 18 units would be considered in that 25% of its stock. And then comprehensive permit does not waive permitting requirements such as building permits, state highway accessibility and water waste disposable permits and state codes, state building codes. And a community can deny a developer a comprehensive permit by claiming safe harbor once they are approved, once they have an approved housing production plan, which Auburn does. And they have an increase in their affordability of their housing stock at least 0.5% every year. And the town over the year will go 1% and then 1% in the half the year and then 1% after the 2 years. Kind of complicated with the numbers a little bit. So for the subsidized housing, what does Auburn have and what do they need to get towards? So this is 2020 census, and this is also what is in the housing production plan. So there are approximately 6,879 units, which are the calculations, and then the number of units that the Auburn's SHI, which is the subsidized housing inventory, is at a 5.24, so that's 366 units. So for the 10% goal, the town approximately needs to reach 678 units. And I believe this year, or the year that's coming up, there needs to be 35 units. So does that make sense to everybody, hopefully? And then how is Auburn doing in compared to its neighbors? So not too bad. Working with other towns, it's not doing too bad. Yeah, so Auburn is kind of, as you can see, we're at, or you guys are at 5.24, like Worcester is at a 12%, Oxford is at a 7.4, et cetera, et cetera. So what does affordability look like? Because everybody looks at the term affordable housing and it's like, what's going on? So when you're looking at the area median income in Auburn and Worcester, this is what it is. So for someone who is having at an 80% AMI, that's one person making $65,000 approximately. So college graduate coming out of college, going ahead with it, that's what it could be. So you can kind of see how that plays out. Because I remember this, I remember Todd was asking the developer about what is affordable and what's going on with it and what percentage is the 80% and the 60% in that terms. So then the population and households in Auburn. So here's just an outlook of the median age, the median household income, and how the statistical aspect is for Auburn. That's there. So the housing characteristics in Auburn, there's about 6,750 occupied units. 82% are owner occupied, 18% is renter friendly, or renter occupied, sorry. The vacancy rate, which is at a 3.6. In a healthy market, it's between a 4 and a 6%. Single-family detached units is at a 78%. The household value is around $290,000, $95,000. Medium households are sold at $402, and the median price of condos are at $327. Please excuse my dyslexia. Cost of living. So about 62% of respondents reported they're spending more than 30% of their monthly income on mortgage, rent, and properties and everything along that line. Usually when you look at an aspect of how housing costs should be, it should be under 30%, or it should be about 30% of your cost should go towards that. You're seeing that now that there's a shift in change, a lot of households are becoming, as like people say, like house poor. Like a lot of their mortgage and a lot of their rent money is going towards paying like your mortgage or your rent. Like you can't really afford anything else given this economy. And then 28% of respondents are finding it challenging in affording a house, and about 30% qualify for affordable housing based on the income and based on the number of people that are there. So there is a need and the demand for affordable housing, and we've gone and seen in the previous slides what that would look like. So what options does Auburn have in fulfilling housing needs? Engaging with developers for 40B options is one input, and then the housing production plan that is there, encouraging residential development types with modest density, such as townhouses or cluster home developments or small-scale development, which we call as the missing middle, because we see single-family houses with large lots, or we see big developments. There isn't anything that's in the middle that is friendly, that is first-time home owner friendly, and things along that line. Concentrate new housing or readaptive use of existing buildings that are already there, like an old mill or anything along that line that is already there that can have the integrity of the town and go in that route. Pursue reliable sources of affordable housing and having something like an affordable housing trust, having community preservation and using CPA money along that line, and having zoning that would diversify housing would really help with this. So here are some resources. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Board, do you have questions?
Yeah, if I may, thank you for the presentation. I just have a couple of questions that I want to get clarity on, and I share your opinion that I wish the vast majority of the people that were here previously stayed for this. Maybe we do this first next time before the public hearing to keep them captive in the room. You heard one of the residents say that being designated a quote-unquote compact community gives Auburn the right to reject 40B applications. That's the first time I've heard that. Is that true or no?
I believe that's not true. Right now, it's just going towards that safe harbor unit, and then kind of taking baby steps is how it's, as I would say, it's put. And I think we are going to reach, I think we are going to reach safe harbor.
The next couple questions I have.
Mr. Crane, can I just comment on that? Follow up on that? That's one of the questions we did ask Phil DiMartino.
Yeah.
When we had a conversation with him on September 30th, specifically because we were a compact community. Does that exempt us from the requirements? And he said, absolutely not. I don't know where that's coming from. So that is not true. The fact that we are a compact community does not give us any reason to deny 40B project.
So, in terms of...
Just to let you know, we had a conversation with him on September 30th, Adam, myself, and Jasifa. Very comprehensive discussion. He's with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. We talked about the eligibility of safe harbor. We're not there right now, although as Jasifa's highlighted on one of her overheads, all depending on the consideration for Perry Place, that may put us into safe harbor. But it's all about timing. It all depends when it happens. And I asked Adam, we submitted a letter to the state. I wanted that determination in writing on our eligibility for safe harbor. So we've been told verbally we're not eligible, but we did submit something in writing and expect something back from the state shortly.
Thank you. A couple of the questions. In terms of when the units count towards our safe harbor, is it upon ZBA approval? Is it upon issuance of a building permit? Or is it upon issuance of a certificate of occupancy?
So I think with our meeting, what Philip said was once, correct me if I'm wrong, once I believe it gets the approval in the town clerk's office, you can submit that in and you have a year from that date that is it's stamped, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think there are two, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are two conditions. One, approval by the ZBA, and two, when it's permitted.
Yeah.
So we were told, and it was not a building permit, it's when the project is permitted. So Eastland Partners, those units were counted in 2020. So we don't have that year over year because there's such a gap. It's not when it's occupied, and it's not when the building permit is issued, but it's when the project is permitted and approved by the ZBA.
With the seal of the clerk's office.
Yes.
I remember that because some other towns were running into that issue, so with that date that is there from the clerk's office.
When that counts, if they choose not to do construction for a year or two, we get safe harbor then, but not when the units are being built?
Correct.
No, and again, I do think we have a need for housing, but I've been told for so long that, once they get occupancy, they count. And Eastland was a staggered thing, and that was going to save us for 10 years. Now they're saying we got to take new projects until we hit 300 and something more units.
Yeah, once you hit that 10% of 600.
Yeah, but the 300 units in this town is going to be very difficult to achieve.
But you kind of, I guess, put it towards that safe harbor of like hitting that 0.5% at a time, slowly and gradually.
And ADUs don't count anything towards
If it is deed restricted.
Has to be deed restricted.
for 10 years.
Yes.
And make a note, because people always have the question, mobile homes are not considered affordable housing
Unfortunately not.
because they're not deed restricted to be.
Yes.
I want to clarify.
Unless you have a lot
They
that is.
are affordable housing. They are not affordable housing as far as 40B law.
Right.
Yeah, unless you have a lot that is deed restricted for that, I mean, it's going into the complicated, like.
So some of the figures in this presentation, I think it's stated 2021.
Yeah.
That's the latest data available?
I believe so, yeah, because I think I've taken this out of the data that was there for the housing production plan data.
Because if I could find a house under 240,000 in this town, 295,000, I mean, I think a lot of people would jump on that. But that's the median value, that's,
Yeah, I think that's dated in 2022. I think that's,
So I guess my question is, how many units would the ZBA have to permit within the next 12 months for us to get safe harbor?
I think it's 35 right now.
35.
It's 35.
35, and not 35 affordable, just 35 units? Or is it 35 affordable units? So do all the units,
So all the units count as affordable.
Right.
Once you hit, so example, if this developer, just giving us 72 units, counted that 25%, the entire 72 units would be considered affordable.
So if Perry Place, in theory, is approved next year,
How many units would that be altogether? So 155. So all 155 units would be considered affordable.
for
and
one
we would,
year.
and we would get safe harbor for 1 year.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Because that would hit that 1%.
And, all set?
Yes, thank
My
you.
question, and I'll go to you, Dan, next. My question, has the Perry Place project come back to the town, to the zoning board of appeal or
Yes.
anything? It has. All right, other question is, are assets, are assets looked at when you're trying to figure out if someone is eligible for an affordable housing, or do they just look at income?
Ooh, I do not know the answer to that and that entire process of how 40B properties are looked at specifically. I have worked in public housing and in other developments in the past, and assets were looked at, but I would not know in terms of how the developer would go about the screening process.
Okay, I got you, thank you. And one more question. Did you say that, did we hear that in-law apartments are considered affordable?
So again, deed restricted.
If they're deed restricted?
If they have a deed for that, yeah.
Okay. Dan, did you have any questions? Dan Carpenter?
Yes, I did. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had submitted a couple prior to the meeting. Sarah said that we could do that, so I did submit them last Wednesday. So I don't know if Jasifa had a chance to look at them. I think Todd asked and Steve asked.
Yes, I think you had 3 questions, right? Or 4 questions, I think. Okay, so I think
Four with multi-parts, unfortunately.
yeah, okay, so I think one of them was in Massachusetts process of adding units to the SHI inventory. Oh, okay, hold on. Sorry, I wrote the notes down. One of the questions was, when are subsidized units eligible to, when are units eligible to be added in the SHI? Which I think we've answered that question in the building permit issue or when it's occupant, and it just depends on how so once it's added in, it's considered there for that time being, and then you would have to hit that 10%. So I think we've answered that one. And then I think the other question was, is there an expectation that remittance, will there be discussed at certain level, certain times, lanes? What do you mean by that one? Is there
So that goes to the LIP conversation.
Oh, okay,
Again,
okay.
We've had conversations with Mr. Sotier, and tonight was a repeat of, so I'm glad we've made progress where we can actually now discuss, which, you know, we're concerned about the timeline now. We could have been having these discussions anytime in the last year. So that was kind of,
okay.
I didn't know if you at CMRPC had any kind of insight into how other communities did it with or without a LIP policy, because I know some towns do, or some communities do, some don't have policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would not know the answer to that specific question. Yeah, and then...
And just my last one is, so the town clerk's office says we have 6,750 number of households, yet the number of units is like 200 odd off that, the 6979. What
I guess
is
we
the
go
cause
off
the
of what's
difference
in
between
the...
that number?
It's the occupied number of units.
The occupied number. I guess I'm confused, because if we have 6,750 households, that would be the number, but yet we have this higher number that we're basing the 10% off, which is 6,979, and I don't understand how we have this difference. If we're saying we have 6,750 households, how do we have nearly 7,000 household units, I guess?
I believe that, Adam, I believe the numbers are the 6,750 occupied housing, and there's a couple hundred that are either vacant or they're, going through sales or whatnot. I think that's the differences in the numbers.
All right, thank you. That exhausts my question.
Madam Chair, I know it's at your discretion, but is it possible if any members of the public have questions that they ask them?
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, yep. Go to the mic. Do you have any questions?
Hi, Doreen Goodrich, 5 Lower Winbrook Drive. My question and concern is about the average median income. I think I was shocked to see that the average median income was 122. I think a few years back it was 92,000, but Auburn's was 72,000. So my question is, how often are these median incomes taken into consideration, and has there ever been consideration at looking at just the town's median income? Because if you base an affordable unit on $122,000, we're looking at market rate in Auburn, and that's just not affordable. So, so we have to accept the 40B housing and the affordability, but they're really not affordable because they end up being market rate based on Auburn's median income. And the idea is that, you know, people who work here and went to school here stay in Auburn and live here, or people who retire and downsize go to places like that. So, yeah, so my question is, through the chair, when can the average median income be looked at and discussed, and if possible, changed if it need be? Thank you.
So that goes by, if you look, I think, online, even if you just like literally Google AMI for Auburn, I know the state has a list of different things. It goes by AMI, I believe, per area. At least when I've worked in housing, that's what they end up looking into. And this is the Auburn, Worcester, like that's that area that is looked at.
So just to confirm, there's no pulling out just looking at the town of Auburn. It's the area assigned to it by the state or federal government that might loop in other
I can try to
municipalities in the
see
area.
if there is a specific pinpoint at that, but I think the data that I have was looking at that AMI for that, the Worcester-Auburn area as a district or as a whole. And I think working previously too in housing, because I've worked at Cambridge, it looks at Cambridge and Boston. It doesn't specifically look at Boston when you are looking into public housing and housing in general too, which kind of, I see the point. I definitely do see what you're saying. I've asked that question multiple times. I'm like, it kind of is like, I'm like, is there something just for Cambridge? Like, is there just something for Auburn? Like, it makes complete sense for it to be. But I think the data collection has to be there for that too. And in terms of the data collection part of it, I think it happens every few years. It doesn't update every year, unfortunately.
If I may, we recently had to go for a bond rating review, and as part of the bond rating review, our official statement is updated with the most present AMI. Let me reach out to see how that is determined, how often it is updated, and how that stacks up against what Josefa presented tonight. Maybe there's a different reporting mechanism as it relates to housing versus other financial data that we have to provide our stakeholders. So we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I will also add in is when you are looking at AMI in terms of housing, you can even look at it in terms of like what is the rental market towards that area. There's something called like the fair rental market value per houses too. If you Google that up, you'll see it. It's a HUD, which is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development census data. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yep, Steve?
It was more for clarification. I think it was mentioned Perry Place has come to before the board, or it's going to be before the board
ZBA.
Thursday, ZBA.
I believe the first hearing is Thursday of this week. So we don't know how quickly that's going to make its way through the ZBA. At what point it's going to come to a vote, that could be before the ZBA for a period of time. Once that gets approved, and like I think Josefa said, it's recorded and stamped with through the town clerk's office. At that point, all of those units will be counted towards our safe harbor calculation. So that may be enough to at least consider delay for any future projects that may come before this board or any other regulatory board in the future.
So I don't know what the outcome of that will be, but if it were to get approved, is it beneficial to delay stamping that for a time, or does it have to be stamped right away?
It always has to be stamped, right, when it's approved by the clerk?
So I think because we only need 35 units, regardless of when that gets approved, either this year or next year, I think that puts us in safe harbor status. It would allow us to consider delaying or deferring consideration for any other 40B project for a period of 2 years.
However, if that project has already come before the town, can that project then be delayed, or is there only a future one?
I believe that if it were to get approved before the end of this calendar year, it gets counted.
Yeah, I believe that's what he said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he said it's counted for the next calendar year. We can check in on that one again.
Yeah, I think there was some emphasis on the actual timing of the approval of the project. It could kick it out another year, so.
Yeah, I think we need to understand that better. And then again, because if it gets approved in that year, but we have another one that's already approved and we're already, again, I'm just trying to understand, because originally I thought the 35 from Tinker Hill was going to keep us or get us eligibility for safe harbor, and now I'm being told different. So I'd like to get the facts of what it will do and understand how we can slow the growth, understand what's there. And again, just because we have safe harbor doesn't mean we don't move forward with projects in the right areas. I just don't want projects that don't fit the right areas being brought to us and being forced or told, well, legally you can't deny it, because that is very frustrating from where I sit.
Madam Chair, I just have one other question.
Yep.
With respect to, once we are deemed in safe harbor, I know that projects that have already applied are grandfathered in and can move forward. Is that application their application to the state, or their designation that the project by the state can move forward and they've applied to the town ZBA?
I believe the latter of the two is my understanding of it. But I guess that would need some, Adam, are you clear on that, or if? So you could actually have two projects at the same time before the ZBA, and the fact that they're before the ZBA and one of the project gets approved doesn't put you in safe harbor status for the other project that's before the ZBA.
No, I understand that. My question is, so let's take this project on Wallace Avenue. If it gets that we're getting close to safe harbor and he decides, okay, I don't want to risk this, is him filing with the state grandfather him in, or is him filing with the state, getting the approval to move forward, and then filing with the town, then grandfather him in?
My understanding is applying with the town for the ZBA.
Okay, so he would have to go through the entire state process, which is a 30-day, or however long it is, then apply with the ZBA, and that's the only way he would be grandfathered in.
That's my understanding of it, yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir. Question?
Yes, more of a ask. Can we put these questions and ask town staff to send it to Mr. DiMartino and ask him to give us his answers in writing to our question?
We would be happy to make that request. I don't know what the policy is of the state in that type of questioning, but certainly we can ask. We have no problem doing that.
No, I would appreciate that, because I really think that they're controlling the process, and through all good faith efforts on your part, Jasifa, and Adam's part, I think, it would be helpful for the state to clarify their process, because it is their process that we're living with, not a town process. So I would make that in the form of a motion that we send these questions, that we ask town staff, the manager, to send these questions to Mr. DiMartino and request a written response.
Second.
Discussion, do we need a motion for that, or can we just
I need some clarity as to what questions are being suggested that we ask Mr. Martino. Because there's been a lot of discussion about eligibility, safe harbor, timing, what matters before the regulatory board at any given time. All of these elements and conditions can change overnight, so I guess I need some clarity as to what precisely you would like us to ask the state.
So I personally would like an explanation of the difference between total households and the number of household units that they're basing their 10% on. So that would be one question. The other question would be the timing of when these units are counted. And I don't know if other board members have questions that they would also like directed, so I'm happy to include those in any motions, but those are...
I'd like a little bit more clarity on that one question about when they're counted, but if delaying or what the process is when it counts, it has to be stamped after the hearing and then it counts, or is there a delay in that, whether it's fiscal year or calendar year or 12-month cycle, when that goes? I don't know if he's the right person to answer the AMI, but it'd be nice to understand if we can separate that somehow and have Auburn as their own rather than an area. I'm not sure if that's the right place. But also, I would like maybe if we get questions via email to the town manager by a certain date, that they can be included.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest question is the timing for the grandfathering and what triggers a project's being grandfathered once we have safe harbor.
I would include those all in my motion and say that we should have, if people have further questions, that they should get them to the manager by, I'm going to say, next Wednesday.
Any other
So that we
discussion?
can get this.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Any other discussion? No? Oh, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? We have a roll call. Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Ann Kavanaugh is a yes. Dan?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. So that motion passes. Do we have any other questions for Jasifa? Are we all set? We're all set? Okay.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for coming in after the technical difficulties as well.
We appreciate that. Okay. So returning back to the agenda, now we're going to hear from the police department, or the police department representative. The police chief is recommending that the board vote on trick-or-treat hours, and the police chief recommends Thursday, October 31st for the trick-or-treat hours between the hours of 5:30 and 7:30. Do we have any questions? Do I hear a motion?
So I have a question. For those who live close to town or work from home, 5:30 to 7:30 is a great time, but for those that have to come from a distance, if they don't work in Auburn, they have to come home, they have to get their children dressed, ready to go, they could not hit that road until 6:30. Is there a possibility to extend the 7:30 end to 8 o'clock? Is there a reason why we have a hard stop at 7:30 and not 8 o'clock?
Do we have anyone?
It's just as dark, but it just buys that extra half hour for those residents who unfortunately don't work here.
If I may, I don't expect that to be a problem because I presented to the chief, if someone were to go out at 5 o'clock in advance of 5:30, is there a consequence? He said absolutely not. So I don't see that as being a problem, but I certainly can reach out to the chief tomorrow morning and express the board's concern.
Okay, so can I make a motion then that we have established the trick-or-treat hours on October 31st, 2024, between the hours of 5:30 PM and 8 PM, so that they're advertised that way to the public?
So I'm not against that, but I would like to hear if there's objection before saying yes. So can we make it conditioned upon the police chief's agreement?
I'd like to understand what his disagreement was before I give him veto power over the board.
So, and I think this is a guideline, so let's be honest, the board is doing this to kind of give people kind of a basis to plan their day. I don't think if we say it's till 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, which I'm not advocating for, is going to stop anybody from knocking on the door at 7:45. So, I mean, I'm happy to support it till 8. Again, I don't think that the board is controlling individual households. We're just trying to set some sort of general guideline so people know when kids are going to be walking around in their neighborhood and in their street, so that they can be mindful as they are driving home. Because I know I used to get out a little early just so that I could avoid, coming home in the dark, because I was afraid of, children being children, and they're excited and running and whatnot. I didn't want to be coming home in the dark.
I'll second that motion.
You second Todd's motion?
Yes.
That we extend, tell me again that the hours would be from when to?
Be from 5:30 PM to 8 PM.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, so let's take a vote. This is a roll call vote. All in favor? Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And Ann Kavanaugh's a yes, too. Okay. All right, back to the agenda. Next item, Fire Rescue Department. There's a request for the board to vote to apply for and expend funds from the Department of Fire Services Firefighter Safety Equipment Grant Program for new P25 compliant mobile radios. Is there someone from the fire department? You can come on up and just tell us a little about it.
Greg Moran from the fire department. The grant that the chief is looking to apply for is actually for structural turnout gear.
Oh, okay.
It's a grant, we're eligible to apply for up to $19,000 grant. If awarded, we would purchase 4 sets of structural firefighting gear. The chief just wants to make sure that the board is in favor of him going after the grant, and then if we should be lucky enough to receive the grant, that they would allow us to accept the grant.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
So just to, probably directed to the town manager, the agenda says that the grant is for the application and expenditure for new P25 compliant mobile radios. I certainly support the turnout gear as well. Should we change the way that we make the motion to allow the chief the flexibility to expend the grants?
Yes, if I may, the chief informed me yesterday of this change because the likelihood of being awarded the mobiles versus the turnout gear, higher likelihood that they would approve the turnout gear. That being said, I would suggest that the motion reflect the turnout gear and not the mobile radios.
So I'd also just like to clarify that the application submission deadline is October 17th, so delaying this further to another meeting would have a negative impact.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to clarify that as well.
Okay, is there a motion?
What is I just want to make sure the gear is right. Did you write that down?
Turnout gear.
Turnout gear.
I'll make a motion that we, make a motion that we apply for and expend funds from the fire department, fire services, fire safety equipment grant program for turnout gear. And the grant is up to $19,000 and there is no match.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve this. All in favor, Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Okay, and Ann votes, I vote yes also. Thank you. Thank you for staying through the whole meeting. All right. Next on the agenda, the DPW, we have an update, we're going to get an update in the library addition pedestrian bridge project. Hi, Joanna, why don't you come sit right here? Thank you. Hi, good evening.
So we have some news about the pedestrian bridge project. So you might have seen a little bit of movement over at the park. We have a site contractor that was awarded the project, AFR Morello. They're on site they were on site last week putting in erosion control, so that's in. They've started cutting down trees, selective tree clearing. There were some trees that needed to be removed along the fire station, as well as some trees to allow for the installation of the bridge. So at this point, the focus is going to be on the footing for the bridge. We still have a little bit of permitting to go through, just final Chapter 91 permitting to set the bridge on the foundations. So hopefully by the time that the concrete is set, we'll have the final permitting and we can set the bridge. The bridge is actually coming next Wednesday. So we're coordinating between the contractor and the bridge fabricator to have that delivery go smoothly. So that's part of the project. We've had some hiccups along the way just because of less than favorable pricing in a previous bid result. So we've pulled out a few things from the contract, and we're going to be doing that in some of the work in-house. So we have ordered some catch basins, so some drainage improvements that is going to be done by the highway department. We're going to be installing some electrical conduit, things that we can handle ourselves, but also making sure that it runs smoothly and we don't get in the way of the contractor. We want to make sure that we try to get this done as quickly as possible. So the other improvements that we're going to be working on is the replacement of the light posts. We're going to try to match the ones that the state had put in near the gazebo. So that's going to continue on towards the fountain upgrades, LED lighting, replacing the pumps, actually having the water run and everything. So it'll be a pretty exciting project, but this is just sort of at the beginning. And then, sorry, not sure if I can hear an echo, but in addition to that, we are also working with the architect for the library expansion. So there's a few other items that need to be addressed as part of that project. The addition is basically, there's upgrades that are required because we're adding on to the library, and those are the sprinkler system, and also we need to upgrade the alarm system at the library. So there's still going to be, I believe, some inspections that need to be done before we finalize the documents for that.
Any questions?
So, and I won't hold you to this timeline, when do you think is the time when the public can walk across the new bridge?
I would expect that it would be next spring, because I would be afraid that, because we're still going to have somewhat of a construction site on either side of the bridge. So I think that would be more of a safe bet than in the middle of the winter.
And although the bridge is going to be stored down in that general vicinity, We have to wait till the issuance of our Chapter 91 permit in order to set it in place. In that review, there's a series of public hearings. I just talked to DEP today. There's a process, there's a review, there's a public process that we have to hold for a 30-day period to allow for some input before that gets approved. So that being said, that kind of kicks things into roughly the spring. Because of winter conditions, I don't think we'll be able to set it in place until the weather cooperates.
Okay. Questions?
Timeline was my question.
Okay. I'm going to go to you in a second, Dan, but I have a question. So you're mentioning that the sprinkler system and the alarm system in the library need to be upgraded in order to put the addition on. Is that money provided for in the funds?
So that's something that we're also looking at, just because the project, the costs have escalated. The initial estimates were done, I believe, in 2020, 21. And so we're trying to pull back a lot of that work, again, doing a lot of the things in-house, just so that we can allocate more funds towards the library.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yep.
The addition itself triggered a code requirement that allowed, that meant we had to sprinkle not only the addition, but the main library as well. And as part of that cost estimate and consideration, Mrs. Pappas and the foundation gave the town an additional $150,000 towards an estimated $225,000 cost to install. We had a meeting this week. We're working with the fire department, with Dory, with Joanna, to coordinate that and to make that as part of the spec when we go out for the addition itself. So there, and we also updated Mrs. Pappas and the foundation. They asked us to come in and give them an update on the project. So they're aware of where we are now. They're excited to see some progress and some activity ongoing down there now. They understand that the bridge is going to be put in roughly 3 to 6 months. But I think that just the energy, the activity down there is creating a buzz and creating some positive feedback. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, Dan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just a general concept of when the timeline, when we might actually see the addition completed.
So we're hoping to have bidding done this winter, and that would allow a company to fabricate the addition, and then installation next year. I'm not really going to guess at how long it's going to take for that work to be done, just because I'm not sure about the fabrication of it. Hopefully over the winter, but it would also depend on when those documents are signed.
But we're on track with those documents. We're just finalizing them, or where are we in that process?
So we do have a set of plans, but they still need to be finalized as to what we're doing with the alarm system, and that would be contingent on that sidewalk, that walkthrough of the library. And then subsequent to that, the architect would prepare the specifications, and that would probably be about 8 weeks out once everything is determined.
So you're thinking sometime early midwinter that this will be bid, and hopefully by next Christmas we might actually have something done. Is that realistic?
So, yeah, so I would expect midwinter to have the bid opening, and I would be hopeful, but it would also depend on the company that wins the bid and actually fabricates the addition. But I would hope that we would be able to get that in before next winter.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no other questions? So we're all set on that item. Thank you, Joanna, and you get to stay because now you can provide us an update, please, on Camp Gleason.
So that is another project that we are, well, that's mostly being done in-house. So currently the building is weatherproofed. Rough electrical and plumbing was installed, and as well as the initial components for the HVAC. Where we're at now is we need to have the drywall put up. To expedite the process, we did advertise for the work. Unfortunately, the pricing did not come in favorable. It was about 10 times our material cost. So we decided to move forward with working with our facility section and getting help from the rest of the highway division, and working on that over the winter. Once the guys are done with their fall roadway projects, and we're also allocating some resources towards the garage to prepare our fleet for the winter. Once that's done, we can have more guys help out with the drywall. So once that is done, we are going to be doing the finish work, bathrooms, finishing up the kitchenette, and flooring. So all of the finish work, and then in the meantime, our facility section is also working on removing the old furnace and the associated plumbing to kind of make the process a little bit easier. We're also working on a parking lot design. The parking lot is going to need to be repaved by the time that this is all done, and we're looking at some stormwater upgrades as well, just so that just because it's so close to the resource area.
So I know town meeting approved additional funds after the initial project, but I mean, this is going on several years. Is it really, and I'm not faulting the work of everyone else and everyone's overworked, but like, didn't we budget for the work to get done at that time and we just keep delaying it because costs are going to keep going up? When do we say we don't have capacity, we don't have budget, come back to town meeting? Like, this is, I mean, it sounds like everyone's doing the project work and not doing their other jobs. And I know things tend to slow down at certain times of the year, but this is the third winter and we don't even have drywall up. I don't know, is there a better use of their time and going to town meeting and requesting the funds needed to finish this project so we can get a building back in use for the community?
So one of the things that we kind of always encounter when trying to bid these projects, this project is a little bit different than a typical project that you would have a contractor come in. I can tell you that the drywall price that came in was just under $70,000. And we're having trouble getting quotes just because there's a lot of work out there, and there's a lot of contractors that don't want to deal with the paperwork of prevailing wages. They don't want to, they don't need to bid jobs that requires that all of their employees have OSHA certification. So there's a lot of restrictions as a municipality that we need to adhere to. So it does become cumbersome trying to find people to actually do the work. And because this is such a small project, it's just, again, the $70,000 for drywall, I think that's, it's basically, okay, well, if I get the job, then great, but if I don't, it's not a big deal. So I know that in '22, we reevaluated the project to downsize the kitchen area and kind of go on a different trajectory. So since then, we have been working on the building, but again, we also needed to change trajectory because of our facility section had changed as well. So we have somebody on board right now, but we're just looking at this as more of a winter project to get that finalized.
No, and again, I know that they're putting the work and effort into it, but what is the process? Like, why, do we just try to do everything in-house and it takes 10 years to do? And they have other jobs, so this is a side job, which is not normal for their workload, but who makes that decision to ask for additional funding to get these projects complete?
So if I may, I think going into this project, it was never intended to be completed in a short period of time. This was a total restoration of Camp Gleason that required a total gut rehab. We committed to utilizing our facilities personnel to get the job done, however long it took. It is frustrating. It's taken longer than we anticipated, but there were a number of things that really led to the delays. I mean, there were supply issues as a result of COVID we couldn't get. We lost our facilities supervisor, which meant that things had to come to a standstill for a period of time. We have a talented individual on board now that is going to resume what our previous supervisor undertook. And that's part of the discussions we had. So the sheetrocking aspect, yes, because of increased cost of supplies and labor, that cost, when we recently went out to try to outsource, it was upwards of $70,000. We can do that same work in-house for about $7,000 or $8,000. So yes, money is an issue. Does it require a consideration to go back? It may. We believe that we have the funds to complete the project as it exists right now, but it's going to mean that it's going to take some time, and we're going to have to do it with our own personnel.
Can I just ask, same thing with the bridge, what's the timeline when Camp Gleason actually opens and is available?
So right now, what's holding us back is the drywall. And that's not something that our facility section is made up of 2 people, so that's not something that they're able to do themselves, alone. Once that is done, then, some of the other projects, they're a little bit more manageable. They're not reaching up into, high ceilings, so they're not gonna need as much manpower. So they'll be able to, regroup and focus their priorities on that project once the drywall is done. So I think that we'll see a lot more progress after that. But that was, that's one of those things that, we just we can't shift those resources right now.
So I understand all that. Is it fiscal year 26, fiscal year 27, fiscal year 28? Like, when can we expect
I mean,
to be completed?
I think that the bulk of it is, is close to be, we're very, the bulk of it is we're good with. We're pretty much done with, the stuff that we needed to contract out, like the HVAC, like the insulation, and, we have the plumber and the electrician on board. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get this done, next calendar year. I can't imagine that that's not going to be the case, but again, I didn't think that COVID was going to happen, so anything can happen, but I can't see us not being able to complete it next year.
Thank you.
Dan, do you have any questions?
No, I think the other board members covered, I think it's just frustrating at the pace of these, and then obviously we get a lot of questions. We've invested a considerable amount of money in these projects, and obviously the generosity of the Paths Foundation. So I know you're doing the best that you can, but it's frustrating.
I understand.
All right, thank you, Dan. All right, continuing on, our next item, also involving the DPW, they would like a letter requesting, or they're requesting that the board vote to authorize application for grant funding for rectangular rapid flashing beacons. you want to tell us about those, Julia?
Sure. So this is a project that is done by Mass DOT, and it's we've already installed a few of these flashing beacons throughout town, and this was this is another program that the state came up with that they're going to actually provide the equipment, so the town would be responsible for the foundations and the installation of the equipment. So we are looking to put these beacons at Auburn Street and Main Street. There's a bus stop there that we've heard from the police department and from residents that kids are having trouble crossing Auburn Street there. And then Oxford Street and Inwood, there's a little bit of a cut through between Bryn Mawr School towards Inwood Road. And so we already have a flashing beacon on Bryn Mawr. We'd like to continue it on to Oxford Street North.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
So I know the grant deadline was last Thursday, so this is a retroactive.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure we got our application in on time.
We did. I figured I would ask for approval from the board. I was hoping, I was actually, when I was online, I was trying to say something about it because we found out about it right before the meeting, so we weren't able to present it to the board prior to last meeting, and the application.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure you
on the
didn't
10th.
miss the opportunity. The other question I have, I know one of the conditions was that the locations have to be ADA, now PROAG compliant. Have you looked at whether the ramps at these locations are compliant? And if not, do you have plans to make them compliant?
So they are not compliant. So it would depend on what's going on with the development at Main Street, but we would want to put a ramp there. The crosswalk there is relatively straightforward. The crosswalk at Oxford Street North is less so. It's at a diagonal. I would want to straighten it out a little bit more. Obviously, putting the crosswalk, I think it goes into the street. So putting a handicap ramp on the sidewalk on Oxford Street, that would be part of that work.
Okay, so you're gonna, okay, thank you.
Okay, Dan, do you have any questions?
Just a follow-up to Mr. Crane's point on these ramps. This is going to be done in-house by our folks, or what is the projected cost for those upgrades?
So we would be installing the flashing beacons, but the ramps, I would have our contractor do that, just because it's the slopes associated with that are much more strict, and I would want somebody that's doing this all the time to get that installed.
At an additional cost, or is that covered in the contract that we currently have with?
So we would be using town funds to pay for those ramps.
Currently in your budget, or is this something you're going to town meeting to ask for additional funds?
I would expect to use either the sidewalk money or any of the roadway money that we have available. Chapter 90 money would be eligible as well.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for grant funding for rectangular rapid flashing beacons from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now we have a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. I think that's it, Joanna, huh?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for waiting through the whole meeting. Thank you. All right, so continuing on our agenda, we're on number 7, communications. We don't have anything. Number 8, select board general items. So we have received the warrant for the special town meeting on November 13th, 2024. We're not looking to take positions on the warrant today, but we would want to approve it so we can get sent on to the Finance Committee for their work. And then, Mr. Casanova, you said department heads will be at our next meeting?
Yes, they've been asked to attend tomorrow night's Finance Committee meeting to support their request for any warrant article that was submitted by them, and the board will take action by way of recommendation on your next meeting on the 28th.
Great. Any questions? We need to vote to approve the warrant. Deanne, do you have any questions?
I have many questions, but not for tonight.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. I'll be more specific next time. All right.
So is this is to approve to transmit, right? We're not taking positions, so.
Correct.
No, correct.
Then no questions at this time. Thank you.
All right, so do I hear a motion that we approve the November 13th, 2024 special town meeting warrant, subject to final review by town council?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So all in favor, Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. All right, great. Continuing on, we're on B, proclamations and recognitions, none this week. C, we have a gift acceptance in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44. DPW Recreation Department has received a $300 gift from the Central One Federal Credit Union, and this is to pay for cookies for the holiday tree lighting. That's generous of them. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Carpenter, do you mind making this motion since you have the wording memorized on the amounts and the amount of gratitude we extend?
I'm happy to make a motion that we accept this donation with gratitude for the holiday tree lighting in the amount of $300.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so we'll do a roll call vote. All in favor, Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, continuing, we're now looking at the drain layer license request. We have the application documents and recommendation of the sewer superintendent on the application. So this vendor has already been vetted by the sewer department. All we would have to do is make a motion to approve or deny the license. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the drain layers license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state, the town, and any of departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Now let's have a vote. All in favor, Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. So now we go to the town manager items. Mr. Kazanovich, free cash?
Sure. So I know most board members were notified by the Department of Revenue when this was certified. Just to let you know that on or about Wednesday, October 2nd, we received certification from the Department of Revenue on the certification of our general fund free cash, which came in at $19,234,268. The retained earnings on our sewer enterprise fund is $1,173,448. Golf course enterprise fund is $1,163,486, And the enterprise fund for our cable access is just shy of 500,000, 494,594. As a result of the certification in the general fund, when we apply our free cash policy, it allows us to spend 50% of the net gain. The net gain was recomputed as a result of the $4 million approval vote by town meeting for the purchase of the property at Chuck's Steakhouse. When we recomputed that, we had roughly $2.2 million net gain year over year when we take into consideration the subtraction of that $4 million. That being said, that gives us about $1.1 million that we could consider at the fall town meeting. We do have several warrant articles appropriating money from free cash, primarily appropriating $500,000 into OPEB, which is an annual appropriation, and about $250,000 that's going to go into our stabilization account. I think the total amount requested is about is about 900,000 or close to $1 million. We're not using all of our 50%, which I'm happy to report. It's going to leave about 200,000. I'll have to do a recalc on that, but all depending on the position of the warrant articles when it goes before finance in the Board of Selectmen.
Could we use that $200,000 at the annual town meeting in May?
You can use that $200,000 at any point during the year. If we had a call for a special town meeting, we could appropriate that outside of annual town meeting.
So that is a yes, we could use it. Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Questions? Questions? Dan, any questions?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very much, Ms. Kazanovich. Continuing on, let's see, tabled items, we have none. Member items. The board, by Mr. Carpenter, he thinks the board should vote to designate one or two select board members to a LIP working group to investigate a policy and procedure for affordable housing projects seeking a LIP agreement. So did we already select people to this group?
So I made a recommendation that we have this working group consisting of, at the recommendation of this board, a member from the planning board, a member from the ZBA, internal staff consisting of Adam Menard, our town planner, and Jasifa, who made a presentation tonight, in conjunction with one or two board members that may be selected as a result of this request tonight. The two members on the planning board we have Bobby Tatro from the ZBA, and we have Glenn Feldman, who is offered to assist from the planning board.
We did not pick two people for the LIP.
I would like to be on this board, on this committee. Is there anyone else? Dan, are you interested, or gentlemen?
I would be interested unless somebody else would want to take a whack at it.
I guess I would nominate Ms. Kavanaugh and Mr. Carpenter to be on this committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second, and we'll have a roll call vote.
I said committee, it's a working group. I just want to be technical.
Okay.
It's for this working group.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, now we're continuing. We have one more item. We're going to talk about the top intersections referred to by Mr. Corain per Mass DOT crash data, and we have a potential vote to set a public hearing. Mr. Corain?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, we discussed we discussed the intersection of Hampton Street, and Jerome, thank you. it's past my bedtime. In Jerome, with respect to safety following a series of crashes at that intersection, we had a report from the Auburn Police Department that was very detailed, and I know that I believe 2 meetings ago, Mr. Carpenter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, as part of your motion, you had requested a public hearing on traffic safety in the town in general, and that passed. During the conversation, the police chief, I referenced the top 5 intersections with respect to Jerome and Hampton based on the Mass DOT crash data, and he asked that I forward that information in advance of a public hearing. So this email was just my forward in advance of the public hearing I committed to that night. And these are, the 5 intersections that are under town jurisdiction that have the highest number of crashes during the last 5 full calendar years, plus any 2024 crash data. And those intersections, in case anyone's wondering, is Bryn Mawr at Leicester, Oxford North at Pinehurst/Vinyl, Swanson at Vine, Auburn at Perry, and Jerome at Hampton, which we already got a report on. So in terms of the public hearing, I don't believe a date was set, although we had committed to holding a public hearing. And it was not meant to be limited to these intersections. It's just that these intersections were requested by the police chief.
And what would you like the public hearing to discuss? Or what would you like to come out at the public hearing?
I'll defer to Mr. Carpenter for that, since that was his motion.
So in general, we want to gather information, we want to identify. Mr. Crane has already done quite a bit of work by, identifying a resource that we can use, but also to give the residents an opportunity to talk to us about their concerns. We heard a lot tonight from the folks on Wallace Ave, which is a very old neighborhood or older neighborhood. The street that I live on also doesn't have, sidewalks and the like. So I know people in general, whether it's traffic related or just traffic safety related, as we talked about with the Halloween event and everything else, is I want to make sure that as people are traversing and we're sharing the roadway, which seems to be getting a variety of interest from bicyclists as well as your walkers and your joggers, we want to make sure that they're safe and that we're identifying areas where they may not appear on this report, but they might be somewhere where we can make a fix.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
So as far as the public hearing's concerned, are there town departments you want in attendance?
I would think we would want the police chief, we want engineering there, we want the planner there. Those are the top 3 that I would think. We might ask the school departments if they would like to send a representative, in that we do have walkers and we do have, I noticed, not that it's unusual, even when I was in high school, there's a lot of traffic between the high school property and the McDonald's, and I don't know that we're necessarily, I know we've made improvements there, but
Yeah, I mean,
there's
just adding.
a lot of kids going back and forth. But anyways, in general, those are the 3 people that I would say, and potentially ask the school department if they would like someone they might have identified and want to share their own concerns.
I would just like to add to that list the fire chief or a representative from the fire department, considering EMS services. They're usually the first on the call for crashes, so they can provide a important input as well.
Just so I have a sense of how this is going to play out, as a result of the public hearing, is it the board's expectation that the public hearing is going to result in a series of traffic studies that will have to be conducted by Auburn PD? And if so, is there a timeline? Because it does tie up resources for a period of time in order to conduct these. I'm just trying to get a sense of what I can convey to the police chief as a result of the board's request.
In my opinion, I think whatever comes out of the meeting can be prioritized. I don't know what's going to come out of it. I think Mr. Carpenter stated too, we have this accident data, but we don't know what we don't know. We don't know the close calls or the things that aren't reported or what the residents are seeing that are large concern to them. But I think the intention, from what I think, is to prioritize those items, have, again, with engineering, go around. I think the incident, Jerome and Hampton, is really boiled down to sightlines. So obviously, they were written up as poor sightlines in the police report. What can be done from an engineering standpoint and prioritizing that work, so it could all intertwine, but be separate paths that they need to take.
Yeah, I mean, I would just agree with Mr. Chambers. I don't know what's going to come out of this hearing. I think that the expectation should be that, these are serious quality of life issues that I know that I'm probably not the only board member. All 5 of us hear from different neighbors of different areas asking for traffic safety as it relates to crosswalks or walking their kid to school. We heard tonight, around Wallace with respect to lack of sidewalks and dangerous intersections. And I know that I've been contacted by residents who share, those concerns as projects are going before ZBA. They're voicing them at that board. They're voicing them at the planning board. So I think that, I don't know what will come out of the meeting. I expect that there will be a series of issues identified that will require staff, attention to see if, everyone has their perception, but is it valid based on data, based on sight lines, based on issues? And then if it is valid, what can the town do to make improvements, safety-wise? I don't think that, the board, at least I don't intend to necessarily say, I want hard deadlines of this intersection looked at by this time, et cetera. I think what we're looking to do is to create a forum for the public to come before the board, to come before staff and voice their concerns that they're voicing to us in our capacity as selectmen, but not in the public forum.
So may I ask, so this won't be, if, we won't limit the discussion to these intersections. Okay, so if people might come before us and discuss intersections that involve state roads like Route 12 or Route 20, and those are not under our jurisdiction, but they could still express concerns.
Absolutely. I mean, at that point, what we would do is we would ask that the town administration relay that information back to Mass DOT, because we don't have jurisdiction to make any changes there. Again, this list came out because I referenced that Jerome was the top 5th intersection, and the police chief said, can you forward this information to me? I don't think the intention of this list or the vote was to limit the discussion points that the public wants to bring forward with respect to issues on their streets that they walk on, they walk their dogs on, their children walk on, bike on, et cetera.
Thank you. Questions?
Is there a suggestion on when the public hearing should take place? Let me check the availability of those individuals that need to be present. We can come back with a recommendation on when that will occur.
So we don't need to take a vote today. We'll wait until we actually have a date then for meeting. Correct? Okay, sounds good. Dan, any other questions?
No, I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the last item is, we're going to talk about our minutes from the September 9th, 2024 meeting and the September 23rd, 2024 meeting. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about these minutes? No. Hearing none, they're accepted as presented. Okay, and we're meeting in 2 weeks. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to adjourn. Let's do a roll call. All in favor, Steve?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you, we're adjourned.